Your garage is supposed to be the safest place your car can be. Closed off from the weather, protected from theft, out of traffic, under your roof. But here's something nobody talks about. For a growing number of vehicles on the road right now, that garage might be the most dangerous place you could put them. Not while you're driving, not while you're accelerating onto the highway, but while they're sitting completely still. Engine off, keys inside, you're asleep upstairs, and something is happening inside that vehicle that you have absolutely no idea about. Fires starting without warning, batteries overheating hours after the car was last driven, electronic systems staying active long after shutdown, generating heat in an enclosed space with no ventilation and nowhere for that energy to go. And in some of the most serious cases we're going to cover today, the official government safety agency for vehicles in the United States issued a direct warning. Park outside, away from your home, away from other vehicles, away from any structure, until the repair is done. That's not a suggestion from a consumer blog. That's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So today, we're breaking down 12 vehicles that have been at the center of these garage fire risk warnings and recalls. We're starting from the cases where the risk was real, but more contained, and building toward the most serious, most documented, most alarming situations on record. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly what's changed about modern vehicles, why this problem is growing, and what you need to do right now to protect yourself. Let's get into it. Before we start, you need to understand one thing. This is not about one bad brand. It's not about one manufacturing mistake that slipped through quality control. It's about a fundamental shift in how vehicles are built and what they carry inside them. Modern vehicles, especially hybrids and electric vehicles, store enormous amounts of energy in high-voltage battery systems. That energy is densely packed, carefully managed, constantly monitored by onboard systems that run even after you power down. And when something goes wrong inside one of those battery packs, it doesn't fail slowly. It doesn't give you a warning light and a few days to get to a mechanic. Lithium-ion thermal events, which is the technical way of describing what happens when one of these batteries fails catastrophically, can escalate from nothing to a fully involved fire in a matter of minutes, inside a closed garage attached to your home, at 2 in the morning, while everyone inside is asleep. That's the scenario that regulators are trying to prevent. And that's why the _0_0_ warning, when it gets issued, is one of the most serious alerts NHTSA can send. Keep that in mind as we go through this list. Starting at number 12, the Hyundai Kona Electric. This is a vehicle that earned strong reviews for its efficiency and practicality. It was one of the earlier affordable electric vehicles to gain real traction in the market. But it was also one of the earlier examples of what happens when battery supply chain issues translate into real-world fire risk. The Kona Electric was linked to battery fires in parked vehicles, with multiple incidents reported across different countries. The batteries in the affected models were supplied by LG Chem. And here's what made this case significant. The fires weren't happening during charging. They weren't happening during driving. They were happening while the vehicles were parked, sitting still, completely off. Hyundai issued a large-scale recall and, in some markets, offered buybacks for owners who didn't feel comfortable with the vehicle. It was an early, clear signal that EV battery fires in stationary vehicles were going to be a recurring issue, and they were right. At number 11, this one surprises people, because we're leaving the electric vehicle category entirely, and that's the whole point. The Kia Seltos and Kia Sportage. Conventional internal combustion engines. No massive battery pack. No high-voltage system. and yet both models have appeared in NHTSA recall records tied to fire risks in parked vehicles. Engine compartment fires, electrical system faults, heat retention in components that stay active or retain temperature after shutdown. This matters because it breaks one of the most dangerous assumptions that people make about garage fire risk. The assumption that it's purely an electric vehicle problem. It isn't. Any vehicle with high heat generation, complex electrical systems, or components that can fail and ignite carries some version of this risk, and the Kia models on this list prove that the problem is broader than most people realize. At number 10, Ram heavy-duty trucks, the 2500 and 3500 series, built for maximum work capacity, maximum towing, maximum payload, and maximum heat generation. When you run a heavy-duty truck hard, towing at or near maximum capacity, the powertrain components absorb enormous amounts of heat. Under normal circumstances, that heat dissipates over time after you park the vehicle. But in an enclosed garage with limited airflow and no ventilation, that dissipation takes longer. And if there's any mechanical stress on components already running at their limits, the combination of residual heat and system fatigue creates conditions where a vehicle fire becomes possible, even after shutdown. This isn't a software defect or a battery cell issue. It's a physics problem. Energy stored as heat in a system that isn't designed to sit in an unventilated enclosed space. Heavy-duty truck owners, especially those who work their vehicles hard before pulling them into the garage, need to be aware of this. At number 9, Hyundai enters the list again. But this time it's not the Kona Electric. It's 3 separate models from 3 different vehicle classes: the Tucson, the Palisade, and the Sonata. Different segments, different customers, different use cases. But here's what they share: the same underlying electrical architecture, the same components, the same suppliers, and similar reported issues involving fire risk tied to electrical systems and engine compartment failures. This is what makes the Hyundai cases particularly notable. When one model in a manufacturer's lineup shows up with a specific type of failure, that's a problem with that model. When 3 completely different models from different segments start showing similar failure modes, that's a problem with something deeper: a shared component, a shared system, a shared supply chain decision. And that's when regulators start paying very close attention. Hyundai has processed multiple rounds of recalls across these models, replacing components, updating software, and in some cases, making substantial mechanical repairs. But the pattern itself is the warning. At number 8, BMW. And this one is important because it challenges another assumption: the assumption that premium engineering means premium safety margins that protect you from these kinds of failures. Nearly 200,000 BMW vehicles across multiple model lines, including the 3 Series, X3, X4, Z4, and 5 Series, were recalled in late 2025 for a fire risk that had nothing to do with electric motors or lithium-ion batteries. The culprit was the engine starter relay, a component that can corrode when exposed to moisture. When that corrosion occurs, the relay can overheat and short-circuit. And here's the part that made this recall particularly alarming. BMW studied 10 vehicles that had already caught fire before issuing the recall. The fires can ignite hours after the vehicle was last driven. Cartelligent hours. You parked the car, you went inside, you ate dinner, watched television, went to sleep. And 3 hours later, the starter relay in the garage is overheating. NHTSA said in the fire risk warning, owners are advised to park their vehicles outside and away from structures until the remedy is complete. Consumer Reports. Nearly 200,000 BMWs told to stay out of the garage, because of a corrosion problem in a mechanical relay. Not a battery, not a complex hybrid system, a relay. At number 7, the Hyundai Tucson appears on this list again, and that repetition is not an accident. When a specific model generates enough separate complaints, reports, and investigation triggers to warrant multiple recall actions across different systems and different model years, it stops being a coincidence. The Tucson has been linked to engine compartment fires, electrical system faults, and fire risks in parked vehicles across multiple recall campaigns. Some tied to the engine, some tied to the ABS module, some tied to electrical components specific to certain model year configurations. What this tells you is not that the Tucson is uniquely catastrophic. What it tells you is that when a problem is systemic rather than isolated, it tends to resurface. And that pattern of recurrence is exactly what regulators and safety advocates use to elevate a vehicle's risk classification. The Tucson's repeated appearances on recall lists related to fire risk make it one of the more documented cases in its segment. Now we shift, because up to this point, we've been talking about vehicles where fire risks were real, documented, and serious. But the top 5 vehicles on this list represent a different category entirely. These are vehicles where NHTSA issued formal park outside advisories, where manufacturers acknowledged the risk was severe enough to tell hundreds of thousands of owners to keep their vehicles away from any structure, where in some cases the fires kept happening even after the first recall attempt failed to fix the problem. This is where documented risk becomes confirmed, recurring reality. At number 6, the Chevrolet Bolt EV and Bolt EUV. This is one of the most extensively documented EV fire recall cases in United States history. All Chevrolet Bolt electric vehicles were ultimately recalled due to the risk of the high-voltage battery pack catching fire, and GM asked all Chevrolet Bolt vehicle owners to park their vehicles outside and away from structures, and to not charge the vehicles overnight. Consumer Reports every single Bolt, every model year, every one that had already been repaired under a previous recall attempt. Because here's what made the Bolt situation uniquely alarming. Even Bolts that had already had recall work done weren't free and clear. GM was aware of vehicles that caught fire after the recall fix was performed. Money Digest. A vehicle caught fire in Vermont while charging after the recall repair had already been completed. That meant the first fix didn't work, and owners who thought they had resolved the issue still had a vehicle in their garage that carried fire risk. The batteries in the affected Bolts were supplied by LG Chem, and the defect, traced to manufacturing flaws in specific battery cells, proved difficult to detect and even harder to fully remediate through software updates alone. Eventually, GM replaced battery packs entirely. But for an extended period, hundreds of thousands of Bolt owners were living with a vehicle they'd been officially told to keep away from their homes. At number 5, the Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid, a minivan, a vehicle designed specifically for families, for parents doing school runs and grocery trips and weekend road trips with children in the back seat. Owners were instructed to park their vehicles outdoors and away from other vehicles or structures due to a risk of fire, even if the vehicle is turned off. Owners were also told not to charge these vehicles, even when the vehicle is turned off. That's the key phrase, because the instinct most people have is that a vehicle that's powered down is inert, not generating heat, not drawing power, not doing anything that could cause a fire. But hybrid battery systems don't fully deactivate when you turn the ignition off. They monitor, they balance, they manage thermal state. And if a cell inside that pack has a defect, that management system can become the ignition source. A family vehicle, parked in the garage of a home where children are sleeping, told by the government to be kept outside. At number 4, the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe, the plug-in hybrid version of one of America's most iconic SUVs. And here is where the story starts to get more complicated. Chrysler issued a recall for Jeep Wrangler plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and Jeep Grand Cherokee plug-in hybrid electric vehicles due to a risk of fire while parked or driven. Owners should park their vehicles outside and away from structures and other vehicles until their vehicle has been remedied. Owners should not charge unrepaired vehicle batteries because the risk of fire is higher in a charged battery than when the battery is depleted. Autoblog risk is higher when the battery is charged, which means the act of plugging in your vehicle, the thing you're supposed to do every night as a plug-in hybrid owner, was making the situation more dangerous. And the Grand Cherokee 4xe wasn't alone, because at number 3, its sibling vehicle brings the same problem with even more urgency. The Jeep Wrangler 4xe. Same powertrain architecture, same battery supplier, same failure mode. And by the time the most recent recall was issued, the same vehicle had been recalled for the same basic problem 3 separate times. Prior software-based repair attempts had not fixed the problem. Jeep is still working on a fix. In the meantime, owners should park outside and away from structures and not plug in their vehicles to recharge. Prior recall numbers were 24V720 and 23V787. Lycus Auto 3 recalls. Over multiple years, Chrysler is aware of 19 fires originating from the battery pack, including 9 in vehicles that received the remedy software. Autoblog 9 fires in vehicles that were already repaired. That number is what elevates the Jeep 4xe vehicles to the top of this list. Not just a theoretical risk, not just a precautionary advisory. 19 confirmed fires in vehicles that owners believed were safe. At number 2, the Volkswagen ID.4. The ID.4 is Volkswagen's flagship electric SUV. Their commitment to the EV transition, their mass-market answer to Tesla and every other brand competing in the space. Volkswagen Group of America recalled more than 44,000 ID.4 SUVs, including 1 recall in which owners were urged to park outside their garages and away from their homes because of an increased fire risk. The defect was misaligned electrodes from manufacturing, confirmed by the supplier, SK Battery America, Consumer Reports. Misaligned electrodes at the cell level, a manufacturing defect introduced before the vehicle was ever assembled, before it ever left the factory, before the owner ever took delivery, a defect that created a potential short circuit waiting to happen inside a sealed battery pack. And the Mercedes-Benz EQB makes its entry here as well. Mercedes-Benz USA recalled certain EQB models. The high-voltage battery may fail internally and lead to a vehicle fire while parked or driving. Owners are advised to park outside and away from structures until the recall repair is complete. Owners are also advised to only charge their vehicles to a maximum of 80% battery capacity until the remedy has been completed. Oriate AI 80% maximum charge. Park outside and wait. 2 premium brands, 2 different battery suppliers, the same fundamental outcome. And now we reach the vehicles that have generated the most official documentation, the most confirmed incidents, and the most concerning pattern of repeat failure on this entire list. The Jeep Wrangler 4xe and the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. The affected vehicles include the Jeep Wrangler 4xe for model years 2020 through 2025 and the Grand Cherokee 4xe from 2022 through 2026. Top speed. 5 years of Wrangler production, 5 years of Grand Cherokee production. Owners should park the vehicles outside and away from structures and not charge the cars until they are fixed. Top speed. And critically, the fix wasn't ready when that warning was issued. Owners were told to modify their behavior indefinitely, to stop charging their plug-in hybrids, to keep them away from their homes, to wait for a remedy that the manufacturer acknowledged was still being developed. A remedy is not yet available, and owners should continue to park outside and refrain from charging until a remedy is available and performed on their vehicle. Autoblog over 300,000 vehicles, with no available fix, told to stay out of the garage. That is the #1 position on this list. Not because the underlying defect is necessarily more severe than some of the others we've covered, but because the scale, the documented fire count, the multiple failed repair attempts, and the extended period during which owners had no resolution make it the most comprehensive and serious __2___ case in recent automotive history. Now step back and look at the full picture. 12 vehicles, multiple brands, multiple categories, gas engines, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, pure electrics, budget brands, mainstream brands, premium German brands, iconic American off-road brands, and across all of them, the same core pattern. Modern vehicles store more energy, manage more electrical complexity, and run more background systems than at any previous point in automotive history. And when something fails inside that system, it doesn't fail quietly. Here's what most people still believe. If the car is turned off, it's safe. If there's no ignition, there's no risk. If it made it home without any warning lights, the garage is fine. But modern vehicle electrical systems, particularly in hybrids and EVs, don't fully power down when you press the button. Battery management systems continue monitoring. Thermal management systems continue operating. Cell balancing processes continue running. And if there's a defect in any of those cells, in any of that wiring, in any of that thermal management hardware, the risk doesn't disappear when the cabin goes dark. It continues. Silently. In your garage, attached to your house. So what do you do with this? First, check your vehicle right now. Go to NHTSA.gov/recalls. Enter your VIN. It takes 30 seconds, and it will tell you definitively whether your specific vehicle has any open recall, including any park outside advisory. 1 in 4 vehicles on American roads right now has an open recall. 1 in 4. And the majority of those owners have no idea. Second, if your vehicle is on a park outside advisory, take it seriously. Not as a suggestion, not as corporate overcaution, as a specific, documented, evidence-based warning issued by the federal agency responsible for vehicle safety in the United States. Third, if you drive a plug-in hybrid or electric vehicle that's under any recall related to battery performance, stop charging to full capacity until the recall repair has been completed. Owners should only charge their vehicles to a maximum of 80% battery capacity until the remedy has been completed. Orient AI. That guidance exists in multiple recall notices, and it exists for a reason. A fully charged high-voltage battery pack carries more stored energy and therefore more potential for a thermal event than a partially depleted one. Fourth, don't assume the first recall repair solves the problem. The Jeep 4xe cases prove that software updates can fail to address physical battery defects. If you've had recall work done and your vehicle subsequently gets recalled again for the same issue, you need the new repair performed. The vehicle is not protected by the previous fix. And finally, before you dismiss this as something that only happens to other people's cars, consider this. Every one of the owners whose vehicles appear in the incident reports that triggered these recalls thought the same thing before their car caught fire. They didn't park outside because they thought their car was fine. They didn't follow the advisory because they assumed the risk was overstated. The people whose garages, and in some cases, whose homes, were damaged by these fires, made the same assumption you might be making right now. The automotive industry is in the middle of the most significant technological transition in a century. New powertrains, new battery chemistries, new levels of electrical complexity. And with that transition comes a new category of risk that didn't exist when vehicles ran purely on mechanical systems. The vehicles on today's list are not necessarily dangerous cars. Many of them are otherwise excellent vehicles with strong reliability records across every category except this one. But this one matters, because the place you trust most to protect your car is no longer automatically safe. Check your VIN tonight, follow the guidance if you're affected, and understand that in the era of high-voltage vehicles, safety doesn't stop when the engine turns off.